6 tips to ditching the guilt and getting your home running more smoothly. All right, so here's a letter written in from a mother who's a little overwhelmed. I have a few adorable toddlers at home. I work full-time and I feel like I'm running on a treadmill that never stops. I'm finding it very hard to make time for everything and figuring out how to prioritize the time I do have. Once I'm home from work, I want so badly to be able to focus on my little ones, to take care of them with patience and love, but the house is flying. There are demands from every corner. The dishes are piled up, the laundry, the supper that needs to be made. When that slides and we don't have a clean clothing or a proper supper on time, the kids end up suffering because they're cranky, or I am. But when I focus on the housework and make sure that everything runs smoothly and pleasantly, I feel guilty that I'm not playing on the floor with the kids. My husband's working full-time and he's just not around so much. I have some cleaning help, but not enough to make a real dent in things. How should I prioritize my time so my children have the best home and mother possible? Okay, pat yourself on the back, because you joined the ranks of the elite. You're a full-time earner, full-time mother, and full-time homemaker. What you need to do is say, oh, you're doing great. And now you need to get off the treadmill and be able to manage your life better before you crack. Tip number 1 is to create a plan. You must have a planner and you must have a plan. If you don't have yourself a planner, a daily organizer, go out and get yourself one right now, or you can check the links below and you can send you over to some of my favorite planners, the ones I use. So you've got to have a planner so you know where everything is, all the things, your lists, your menus, you know what you're doing. Secondly, everything in your home has to have a way that you do it, a schedule, a routine, a plan. So if it's your meals, you need to have meals done every day. You need to have a plan for how you do that. I happen to love using this online meal planner called Real Plans. The link's also below, but anyhow that you want to do it. Many years I just spent making mine by hand or typing it up on the computer and putting it on the fridge. But you've got to have yourself a plan for how you make your menu. Laundry. How do you do your laundry? Do you have a schedule? Do you know what you're doing, or do you just sort of whim it whenever the laundry basket is overflowing? Laundry! You need to have a plan. Make your plan of however you do your laundry, whether you do it per room, you take each basket and put it in the laundry and put it back, or whether you do it twice a week with the whole family, or we do whites on one day or colors on a different day and towels a different day. You've got to have a plan and you've got to stick to your plan. You got to set a time for everything that you need done in a week. You've got to set a time and date when you do it. And that way it runs more smoothly. Like if you know every day from 3 to 4, the kids are playing at somewhere here in the living room, the kitchen while you're making dinner, and at 4 o'clock you go to the park. I totally agree with you that you've got to have time for playing with the kids. Very important. But the way you're going to do that is having a schedule of where everything's planned in your day. And the answer is not necessarily becoming a full-time stay-at-home mom, although I've benefited from that for many years. But that's not necessarily the answer, because many stay-at-home moms also feel overwhelmed, like they don't have time for everything. So the trick is in creating a system and creating a plan. Number 2 is cut back. I know you're going to tell me I'm doing bare minimum, there's nothing I can cut back on, but I'm telling you, if you sit down and look at what you do in a week, you'll find areas where you can cut back. Maybe you can make your meals simpler. Maybe you can use a crock pot and fill it at night, and that way the next day you don't need to make dinner. Maybe it's you don't need to starch your shirts. I don't even know what starching shirts is. I've never done that. There's something that you can cut back on. We used to make fancy desserts. Once a week we have like a nice family dinner. We eat dinner together every night, but once a week we like to make a fancy, nice dinner, and we always have a dessert. And I used to make these really fancy desserts, like from the really nice cookbooks. And you know what? At some point I realized I can't do this anymore, and I cut it out. And since then we eat ice cream for dessert every single week on that night. And you know what? Everyone likes ice cream, so what? One idea to cut back on meals is, to freeze things, to prepare things once a month and put it in the freezer. I actually have this amazing course on how to freeze your dinners in advance. You can also check in the link below and you'll see. But being able to freeze in advance, and dinner is such a huge thing. Like I found on the nights that I didn't need to make dinner for whatever reason, my whole day was different. Do you ever find that? Number 3 is combine. I know multitasking isn't always a great idea because, you have to concentrate on what you're doing, and especially concentrate on your child when they're talking to you. I very much agree with that. But sometimes you can combine things. Sometimes you can fold laundry while you're playing I Spy with your 4-year-old. Sometimes you can, have a game being done at the kitchen counter while you're, mixing dinner on the stove at the same time. There are ways that you can go about, combining. I think one time I posted on my Facebook page, I posted a father doing exercise with his 2 little boys, and he was doing them there while he's watching his boys, and he was doing it with them, and they were helping him. They were sitting on his back or whatever it was, and then they were copying him. So he was not only exercising, he was also spending time with his kids in a fun way, and he was also being a great example that you should exercise. So combining is a really great idea if you can figure out how to do it properly. Number 4 is delegate. Now, I know that Miracle Maker moms think that they can do everything, and I for many years thought that I could do everything until at some point I crashed and burned out. That's another video, you could check that one out. But you've really got to make sure that you delegate. You can't do everything yourself, and the more your family grows and the more needs that they have, you'll find that you really can't do everything. And you know what? It's a humbling experience, but it's true. We Miracle Maker moms really aren't superwoman, and it's important to delegate. So of course the first thing I'm going to say is to get more cleaning help. I finally gave into this concept. I had cleaning help, but a little bit, and I finally gave into it when I think a year and a half into being a full, single mom. I realized that I really wasn't managing. And since then, I can't begin to tell you, it's life-changing to have a proper amount of cleaning help. But sometimes, you can't afford it, or it's not practical. Even finding a teenage girl in the neighborhood who wants to, whether it's babysit or fold laundry once a week, that's really helpful to have someone else that you can rely on to get something done. Now, of course, part of it is having your children do chores. And I find that when you have a proper chore chart that they sit down and they discuss and they agree to, that very often it's much easier for them to say, okay, chore time, okay, fine, time to snap to it, let's go. And remember the concept that, my father drilled this into my head, that if you want privileges, it comes with responsibility. So the older you get, the more privileges you have, the more responsibility you have. So it's important to get your kids doing chores. Another way of dealing with delegation is to have a conversation with your husband. What can you do? What can I do? And sometimes you have other people in your life, whether it's friends, a sister, and your parents in the neighborhood, and they're always asking hey, what can we do? But we always have this mindset that I can do everything. Sometimes it's okay to delegate and say, hey, would you mind doing this carpool once a week for me? I'd really appreciate that. And you know what? Maybe the kids are going to enjoy having the carpool time with their grandparents, and the grandparents think that's fun to have extra, remembering the good old days when they get used to do carpool. It doesn't always work this way, but sometimes it's a mindset that I don't want to give up, that I can do everything. So try to delegate, that's important. Number 5 is emotional support. You have to feel appreciated. At the end of the day, you do a lot, and you've got to feel appreciated. So asking your husband to help make you feel appreciated for what you do, or even to tell your children that when I do something, I would like you to say thank you. It makes me feel really good. But the most important is you. You need to appreciate yourself. You need to look yourself in the mirror every day and say, hey, good job. You're amazing. You're a Miracle Maker mom. And another thing in emotional support is to make sure that you do something every day that you love to do, because that's what's going to give you the emotional energy to do everything that you do in a day, and to do it with a smile. And number 6 is ditch the guilt. I've said this and I'll say it again. Guilt is a recipe for depression. You don't need to be depressed. Your children don't need a depressed mother. They need a vital, excited, enthusiastic mother. So when guilt starts creeping up, I've got another video about this, you can go watch it, it's funny. When guilt starts creeping up, you just got to throw it down to the floor and say, hey, drop the guilt. You're amazing. You're doing everything that you can, and you're doing your best, and that's all that's required of you. And if guilt starts coming along, you just say, I don't need you, guilt. I'm doing the best I can, and I'm amazing. Look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, you're amazing. You are a Miracle Maker mom.